The second day after the aliens arrived brought new horrors to Seoul. The Galactic Council decided it was time for a demonstration of their power to encourage human cooperation. They selected a busy marketplace in the city center where hundreds of people were trying to buy food and supplies before the surrender deadline. Colonel Jang Hyun-woo watched from a rooftop as alien soldiers marched through the streets. Their weapons were unlike anything in human military arsenals. Instead of bullets, they fired concentrated beams of energy that could slice through steel like a hot knife through butter. Their armor seemed to absorb impacts from conventional weapons without any visible damage. The aliens had perfected their conquest system over many centuries. First came the impressive arrival that demonstrated their technological superiority, then the ultimatum with a short deadline to create panic and fear. Finally, a show of overwhelming force that broke the spirit of any potential resistance. It had worked on 47 different worlds. Private Park. Min-ho was assigned to escort duty helping evacuate civilians from the areas where aliens were setting up their control stations. He saw families crying as they packed their belongings, not knowing if they would ever return to their homes. Children asked questions their parents could not answer about why the strange silver people were taking over their city. The alien soldiers moved with casual confidence that made Colonel Jang angry. They posted minimal guards at their equipment sites and seemed genuinely puzzled when humans did not immediately bow down in fear. Their body language suggested beings who had never faced real opposition in their long history of Galactic. Conquest Dr. Kim Hai-won continued studying the alien technology from a safe distance. She noticed that their devices operated on specific frequency patterns that human electronics could potentially disrupt. The aliens were so confident in their superiority that they had not bothered to shield their equipment against primitive interference. Major Yoon Se-jin commanded a special forces unit that specialized in urban warfare. She had her soldiers observe alien patrol patterns and defensive positions. What she discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. The aliens were incredibly advanced, but they fought like an army that had never lost a battle. The aliens made their biggest mistake on the second evening when they announced their Demonstration A. Holographic projection appeared over Seoul, showing the alien leader speaking to the entire world. 50 humans had been selected at random for public execution the next morning to show the consequences of continued resistance among. The 50 hostages was Private Park Min-ho, who had been captured during a routine patrol. The young soldier was separated from the other prisoners and held in an energy cage that hummed with alien power, but the aliens underestimated human ingenuity. And the bonds between family members. Park's sister Yoon-hee was a computer science student who understood networks and communication systems. When she learned her brother had been captured, she immediately began coordinating with other families of hostages. Her technical skills proved invaluable in setting up secure communication channels. The alien announcement had the opposite effect from what the Galactic Council expected. Instead of terror and immediate surrender, it triggered something primal in the human population. Soldiers like Sergeant Oh Dong-min began receiving offers of help from civilians who had never considered themselves fighters. Underground resistance networks formed spontaneously throughout Seoul and spread to other cities around the world. People who had never met each other began working together, united by the simple belief that freedom was worth fighting for. Teenagers carried messages between groups, using routes through sewers and abandoned buildings. Captain Kim Tae-ho received reports that made him realize humanity was different from other species the aliens had conquered. Most civilizations developed advanced technology and then used it to create comfortable, peaceful societies. They had too much to lose and surrendered easily to preserve their way of life. Humans, however, had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting for survival. They were as comfortable with destruction as creation, as familiar with death as life. They had survived Ice Ages, world wars, and countless other disasters by refusing to give up even when defeat seemed certain. The aliens began to notice unusual behavior in their human subjects. Unlike other species they had conquered, humans were not panicking or attempting to flee the planet. Instead, they seemed to be organizing, watching, and learning. The council representatives dismissed this as typical primitive stubbornness. What the aliens could not understand was that humans had faced seemingly impossible odds before and survived. The Korean people in particular had a long history of occupation and resistance. They had developed a cultural memory of how to fight against superior forces using guerrilla tactics and absolute determination. Private Park managed to slip a small data device to his sister during the prisoner transfer. The device contained detailed observations about alien security procedures, patrol schedules, and equipment vulnerabilities. Within hours, this information was spreading through networks that the aliens did not even know existed. The Galactic Council congratulated themselves on their efficiency. Their calculations showed that the public execution would break human resistance completely, allowing them to begin integration ahead of schedule. They had used this technique successfully on dozens of other worlds. But they failed to understand that humans were not like other species. When faced with extinction, most civilizations chose survival, even if it meant slavery. Humans, however, had a tendency to become more dangerous when cornered. Their history was full of last stands and desperate victories against overwhelming odds. Throughout the night before the execution, families gathered in secret locations to plan and coordinate. Many had no military training, but they understood the stakes. If humanity surrendered now, they would lose not just their freedom, but their identity as a species. The aliens monitoring human communications detected increased activity, but interpreted it as panic and desperation. They had seen similar patterns on other worlds just before final surrender. Their experience told them that species always broke when faced with the reality of their technological inferiority. Dr. Kim made a breakthrough discovery while analyzing alien energy signatures. The shield generators that protected their equipment had a specific resonance frequency that could be disrupted using modified human technology. It would not be easy, but it was possible to actually damage their supposedly invincible systems. Colonel Jang realized that the aliens had made a fundamental miscalculation. They understood technology and force, but they had never encountered a species that became more dangerous when pushed to the brink of extinction. The execution was intended to break human spirit, but it might accomplish the exact opposite. As dawn approached on the day of the execution, Seoul was unnaturally quiet. The aliens had cleared the city center and set up their execution platform, expecting crowds of terrified humans begging for mercy. Instead, they found empty streets and closed windows as if the entire city was holding its breath. The 50 human hostages were brought to the platform in energy chains that glowed with alien power. Private Park walked with his head held high despite knowing he would probably die in the next few hours. He thought about his family, his country, and his duty as a soldier. What the Galactic Council did not realize was that they were about to make their greatest mistake. The execution they planned as a demonstration of power would instead become the spark that ignited human resistance. The dog tag hanging around Private Park's neck would soon become a symbol that would shake their empire to its foundation. The aliens had conquered 47 species by breaking their will to resist. They were confident that number 48 would be no different. But they had never faced a species like humanity that viewed death as preferable to slavery and found strength in the darkest moments of despair. The morning sky above Seoul turned dark as shadows covered the sun. Something massive was coming down from space. Captain Kim Tae-ho stood on the roof of the military base watching the giant ship descend through the clouds. The vessel was bigger than any building he had ever seen. Its metal hull glowed with strange blue lights, and the air around it shimmered like heat waves. The ship landed right in the middle of Seoul with a crash that shook the ground for miles. Buildings crumbled under. Its weight and dust clouds rose high into the air. People screamed and ran in all directions, but there was nowhere to hide from something so enormous. The Korean military had been tracking this object for 3 days, but nobody knew what it really was. Private Park. Minho was only 20 years old and had just finished basic training 6 months ago. He stood guard at the base entrance, holding his rifle tight in his sweaty hands. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might jump out of his chest. The young soldier had dreamed of serving his country, but he never imagined facing something like this. Strange beings began walking out of the ship. They were tall and thin with silver skin that reflected light like mirrors. Each creature had 4 arms instead of 2, and their eyes were completely black, like deep holes. Their movements were smooth and graceful like dancers, but there was something cold and frightening about them. The alien leader stepped forward, wearing flowing robes that seemed to move by themselves. A small device attached to its chest began speaking in perfect Korean. The voice was mechanical and emotionless, like a computer. "We are the Galactic Council," it said, "representatives of 1,000 worlds across the galaxy. We have come to Earth to offer integration into our great empire. President Lee." So Young arrived by helicopter with other world leaders. They had been in emergency meetings since the ship first appeared on their radar screens. The alien leader looked at them with what might have been amusement, though it was hard to tell with a face so different from human features. "Your species has been selected for integration," the alien continued. "This is not a request or negotiation. It is an announcement of what will happen. You will surrender all weapons, disband your military forces, and accept your new role as workers in our galactic system. In return, we will not destroy your planet completely." The human leaders looked at each other in shock and fear. They asked for time to discuss the terms with other nations around the world. The alien leader made a sound like grinding metal, which might have been laughter. "Human governments are irrelevant," it said. "You have 72 hours to comply." We have made this same offer to 47 other species. Everyone eventually accepted. Captain Kim had fought in 3 different wars in other countries. He had seen combat and death and thought he understood what real danger looked like. But this was different. This was not human enemies with human weapons. This was something beyond anything Earth had ever faced. The aliens' technology was so advanced that human weapons seemed like toys in comparison. Private Park remembered his grandfather telling stories about the Korean War, about foreign invaders, and the importance of never giving up. The old man had shown him his military medals and talked about fighting for home and family. The young soldier touched his dog tag through his uniform shirt. It was a simple metal disc with his name, rank, and service number stamped into it. Throughout Seoul, people were not running away anymore. They were watching and listening. Many citizens had smartphones and were recording everything, broadcasting the alien demands to the entire world. Social media exploded with videos and messages. People were scared, but they were also angry. Nobody liked being told they had to become slaves. The aliens began setting up strange machines throughout the city. These devices hummed with energy and projected holographic displays showing star maps and alien writing. Korean scientists tried to understand the technology, but it was far beyond human knowledge. The machines seemed to be some kind of communication or control system. Dr. Kim Hae-won was one of the scientists studying the alien equipment. She was brilliant and had worked on advanced physics projects for the government. The alien technology operated on principles that human science barely understood, but she noticed something interesting. The aliens were very confident, almost careless, about security. Colonel Jang Hyun-woo had spent 15 years in special operations. He knew how to observe enemies and find their weaknesses. From his hidden position in a damaged building, he watched the aliens work. They moved like people who had never faced real opposition. Their guards were relaxed, and they left equipment unprotected. The alien leader announced that integration would begin immediately. Humans would be sorted into work categories based on their physical capabilities and intelligence. Most would become manual laborers in alien factories and mines. A few might be selected for more specialized tasks. The concept of human rights or freedom was apparently meaningless to the Galactic Council. Private Park duty was to guard the base perimeter. But he found himself thinking about his family. His parents ran a small restaurant, and his sister Yun-hee was studying computer science at university. What would happen to them under alien rule? Would they be separated? Would he ever see them again? As night fell over Seoul, the alien ship glowed brighter. The creatures inside seemed to need very little sleep and worked. Continuously on their preparations, Korean military commanders received orders to begin inventorying all weapons and equipment for surrender. Many soldiers felt sick at the thought of giving up without a fight. The aliens had conquered 47 species, but they had never encountered anything quite like humans. Other civilizations had advanced technology and peaceful societies. They surrendered quickly because they had comfortable lives to protect. Humans were different. They had spent their entire history fighting for survival. Captain Kim called a meeting of his officers in a secure room deep underground. The alien ships probably had sensors that could detect most electronic signals, but the base had been built during the Cold War. With extensive shielding, they needed to discuss what to do when the surrender deadline arrived. The officers argued among themselves. Some believed resistance was suicide against such advanced technology. Others felt that dying as free humans was better than living as alien slaves. The debate continued for hours, but no clear decision emerged. Everyone knew that whatever they chose would affect not just Korea, but potentially the entire human race. Private Park volunteered for extra guard duty. That night, he wanted time to think about what his grandfather would do in this situation. The old man had faced impossible odds before and somehow survived. Park looked up at the alien ship dominating the skyline. Its lights pulsed in patterns that hurt his eyes to watch. Inside the ship, the Galactic Council representatives were already planning the next phase of integration. They had done this so many times that it felt routine. Select a suitable world, make the demands demonstrate superior power, and wait for surrender. It always worked eventually. Some species took longer than others, but they all gave up in the end. What the aliens did not understand was that they had landed on a world where surrender was not in the human vocabulary. They had chosen to make their demands in Korea, a nation that had been invaded and occupied multiple times throughout history, but had never truly been broken. The people here understood something. The aliens did not. That some things were worth dying. For the countdown to surrender had begun, but unknown to the Galactic Council, they had just made the biggest mistake in their long history of conquest. They thought they were dealing with just another primitive species ready to trade freedom for survival. Instead, they had awakened something that would shake their empire to its core. The third day dawned gray and cold over Seoul, as if the sky itself was mourning what was about to happen. The alien execution platform stood in the center of the city, surrounded by thousands of council soldiers in their gleaming armor. Their energy. Weapons hummed with deadly power, ready to suppress any uprising from the human population. Captain Kim Tae-ho positioned himself on a rooftop 2 kilometers away with his sniper rifle equipped with armor-piercing rounds that he knew would be completely useless against alien shields. But he was not there to fight. He was there to witness and to remember whatever happened next. The 50 human hostages were marched onto the platform in glowing energy chains that made their skin burn with each step. Private Park Min-ho walked among them, his young face calm despite the terror he must have felt inside. His dog tag caught the morning light as it swung against his military uniform. President Lee So-young and other world leaders had officially agreed to surrender after the execution threat. They announced that Earth would comply with all alien demands to prevent further bloodshed. The Korean military command had ordered all soldiers to turn in their weapons and report to designated areas for processing. But something strange was happening throughout the city. Many soldiers had turned in fake dog tags, keeping their real identification hidden. Others had simply disappeared from their assigned posts, melting into the civilian population, like ghosts. The aliens noticed some irregularities, but dismissed them as unimportant. The alien leader stepped onto the platform wearing ceremonial robes that seemed to move by themselves in patterns that hurt human eyes to watch. Its voice echoed across the silent city through translation devices as it began the execution ceremony. This demonstration would serve as an example to all humans about the cost of resistance. Private Park suddenly stepped forward, breaking free from his energy chains. Through sheer determination, the alien guards raised their weapons but hesitated when the young soldier made no threatening moves. Instead, he reached into his uniform and pulled out his dog tag, holding it high above his head. The simple metal disc gleamed in the pale sunlight, stamped with his name rank and service number Park Min-ho, Private Korean Defense Force. His voice carried clearly across the plaza as he spoke in Korean that was broadcast to television screens around the world IAM. Park Min-ho, son of Park Kyung-ho, grandson of Park Dae-ho, he said calmly. My family has defended this land for 5 generations. We have faced invasion before, and we have survived. This small piece of metal represents not just my service, but the promise that no enemy will break our spirit. The alien leader raised its energy weapon, expecting the crowd to recoil in terror as the young soldier was vaporized. But something incredible happened instead. Captain Kim stood up on his distant rooftop. Dog tag raised high and shouted his name and rank into the morning air. Within seconds, hundreds of other soldiers throughout Seoul did the same thing, standing up wherever they were hiding and declaring their identity to the world. Then thousands, then tens of thousands as civilians joined in, many holding improvised tags with their names and professions scratched into metal. The sound rolled across the city like thunder. Not screams of fear, but a declaration of defiance that made the alien soldiers step back nervously. They had never encountered anything like this in their centuries of conquest. Other species begged for mercy or tried to negotiate. Humans were announcing their names as if daring the aliens to remember each one colonel. Jang Hyun-woo realized that the aliens had made a fatal miscalculation. They understood technology and military force, but they had never faced a species that became more united when threatened. The execution was supposed to break human resistance. Instead, it had given them a rallying cry. The dog tag was more than just identification to humans. It represented voluntary service, chosen sacrifice, and the belief that some things were worth dying for. Every soldier who wore one had sworn an oath to defend their people and their freedom. The aliens could destroy the tags, but they could not destroy what they represented. Within minutes of Private Park execution, videos of the Seoul demonstration were spreading across every continent. People who had never served in the military began making their own tags with their names, occupations, and personal mottos. The simple act of identification became an act of rebellion against alien rule. Dr. Kim Hae-won watched from her laboratory as the global response exploded across social media. Humans everywhere were declaring their individuality, their refusal to become anonymous workers in an alien empire. Teachers made tags identifying themselves as educators, doctors as healers, farmers as food providers. The alien response was swift and brutal. Energy weapons rained down on Seoul, turning buildings to ash and creating massive craters where neighborhoods had stood. But for every human they killed, 10 more seemed to take their place. The resistance was not organized in any military sense. It was an entire species deciding to fight. Sergeant Oh Dong-min found himself leading a group of civilians who had never held weapons before. They included teenagers, grandparents, office workers, and shop owners united only by their determination not to surrender their humanity to alien masters. Their lack of training was balanced by their absolute commitment to the cause. The breakthrough came when Dr. Kim discovered that the alien energy shields operated on specific frequencies that could be disrupted by modified human electronics. It was not sophisticated technology, but it worked. Suddenly, their primitive weapons could actually damage alien equipment. Word spread through the underground. Networks that had formed overnight resistance cells began converting everything from car engines to kitchen appliances into weapons. The aliens had superior technology, but humans had something they did not understand: the ability to adapt and improvise under pressure. What terrified the Council forces most was not the sudden effectiveness of human weapons, but the way humans fought. Other species had professional soldiers and warriors, but humans seemed capable of turning every citizen into a combatant. A baker would plant explosives in alien supply areas. A school teacher would gather intelligence on patrol routes. The alien commander sent urgent reports back to the Galactic Council. The conquest of Earth was not proceeding according to plan. Human. Resistance was growing stronger instead of weaker, and their tactics were unlike anything in Council military doctrine. They seemed willing to sacrifice anything, including their own lives, to avoid surrender. Major Yoon Se-jin was captured during a failed raid on an alien command post and brought before a Council interrogator. The creature tried to understand human psychology through its translation device. Why did they continue fighting when victory was clearly impossible? Why did they not accept reasonable terms of servitude? Yoon's answer was simple. She showed the alien her dog tag and explained what it meant to humans. The metal disc represented everything the Galactic Council could not understand about human nature: the value of individual identity, the power of voluntary service, and the belief that freedom was worth any price. The interrogation revealed crucial information about the aliens. The Galactic Council had ruled through fear and superior technology for so long that they had forgotten how to fight a real war. They expected quick surrenders followed by peaceful integration. Their military was designed for intimidation, not prolonged conflict. As the first week of occupation ended, the aliens found themselves facing a nightmare scenario. Every patrol was ambushed. Every supply convoy attacked. Every attempt to establish control met with sabotage and resistance. They had come to Earth expecting to add another worker species to their empire. Instead, they had awakened something that threatened the foundation of their galactic dominance. The simple dog tag of a young Korean soldier had become a symbol that was spreading to other conquered worlds. Rebel movements throughout the galaxy began adopting similar identification symbols. The Galactic Council realized too late that they had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that superior technology guaranteed victory against any primitive species, but humans had taught them that technology without spirit was hollow and that some enemies were too dangerous to conquer. Private Park Min-ho was dead, but his legacy lived on in every human who refused to surrender their identity to alien rule. His dog tag had become more powerful than any weapon. In the Council arsenal, a simple piece of metal that reminded an entire species what it meant to be human. 2 weeks after the execution that changed everything, Seoul had become a battleground unlike anything the Galactic Council had ever experienced. The aliens controlled the major buildings and transportation hubs, but the streets belonged to the human resistance. Smoke rose from dozens of fires throughout the city as guerrilla fighters struck at alien positions day and night. Captain Kim Tae-ho had been promoted to colonel after the previous commander died in an alien bombardment. He now led what remained of the Korean military, along with thousands of civilian volunteers who had taken up arms. The resistance was not organized like a traditional army, but it was far more dangerous because every citizen was a potential fighter sergeant. Oh Dong-min commanded a mixed unit of soldiers and civilians that included Dr. Kim Hae-won, the physicist, and Lee Jae-sung, a communications technician who had worked for the military before the invasion. None of them had trained for this kind of warfare, but they learned quickly when the alternative was death or slavery. The aliens had expected their superior technology to end any resistance within days. Their energy weapons could destroy buildings, and their armor seemed invincible against human bullets. But Dr. Kim's breakthrough discovery had changed the rules of engagement. Modified human electronics could disrupt alien shields, making them vulnerable to conventional weapons. Every resistance cell now carried improvised devices built from salvaged parts that could temporarily disable alien defenses. The technology was crude and unreliable, but it worked often enough to give humans a fighting chance. Alien patrols that had moved with confidence now advanced carefully, knowing that their protective shields might fail at any moment. What confused the Council forces most was the way humans organized their resistance. Other species they had conquered used traditional military structures with clear command chains and predictable strategies. Humans seemed to operate through informal networks that adapted constantly to changing conditions. A typical resistance operation might involve a grandmother who provided safe houses, a teenager who carried messages through sewer systems, a shopkeeper who gathered intelligence, and a group of former soldiers who conducted the actual attack. The aliens could never predict where the next strike would come from. The breakthrough in understanding alien psychology came from an unexpected source. Park Yoon-hee, the computer science student who was the sister of the executed Private Park, had been working to decode alien communication systems. Using equipment salvaged from destroyed alien vehicles, she discovered something remarkable. Galactic Council military doctrine was based on fighting civilized species that followed predictable rules of warfare. They expected enemies to have clear leadership structures, military bases, and strategic objectives that could be targeted and destroyed. Human resistance had none of these characteristics. Instead of a centralized command structure, the human resistance operated like a living organism. Each cell was independent but connected to others through hidden networks that shared information and resources. When aliens destroyed one group, 3 others would form to take its place. Lieutenant Park Yuna had taken her dead brother dog tag and joined the Special Forces unit that conducted the most dangerous missions. She was not a trained soldier, but her computer programming skills proved invaluable in hacking alien systems and disrupting their communications. The Resistance discovered that alien equipment was designed with built-in security systems that prevented unauthorized access. But these systems assumed that potential enemies would use similar technology. Human improvised electronics operated on completely different principles that alien security could not recognize or block. Dr. Kim's team made another crucial discovery about alien weaknesses. The Council forces relied heavily on their advanced sensors and communication networks to coordinate their operations. When these systems were disrupted even temporarily, the aliens became confused and ineffective. Human resistance fighters began targeting alien communication towers and sensor arrays, using weapons built from modified farming equipment, construction tools, and household electronics. The attacks were successful not because of superior firepower, but because aliens had never designed their systems to defend against such primitive methods. The aliens responded to growing resistance with increasingly brutal tactics. They began executing random civilians in retaliation for attacks on their forces. Entire neighborhoods were destroyed to eliminate suspected resistance hideouts. But these actions only made human resistance stronger and more determined. Every alien atrocity created new recruits for the resistance families who had tried to remain. Neutral joined the fight after losing loved ones to Council brutality. The aliens had expected fear to break human spirit. Instead, their violence had awakened something primal in the human psyche. Major Yoon Se-jin had escaped from alien custody. During a resistance raid on a prison facility, she brought back intelligence that changed everything. The Galactic Council was not as powerful as they claimed. Their empire was held together more by reputation than actual military strength. Many of the species under Council rule were unhappy with their situation, but had never rebelled because they believed resistance was hopeless. The sight of primitive humans fighting back successfully was beginning to inspire other worlds to consider their own uprisings. The aliens made another critical mistake when they decided to bring reinforcements from other systems. The additional ships and soldiers showed human resistance fighters that the Council was struggling to maintain control. A truly invincible empire would not need to send more troops to defeat a single primitive world. Colonel Kim realized that the key to victory was not destroying the alien military, but breaking their will to continue fighting. The Council had ruled through intimidation for so long that they had lost the ability to cope with determined resistance. Their soldiers were demoralized by fighting an enemy that refused to surrender. The resistance began using psychological warfare against alien forces. Human fighters would display their dog tags prominently during battles and shout the names of fallen comrades before attacks. The aliens found these displays of individual identity deeply disturbing because their own society was based on collective obedience. Dr. Kim discovered that alien soldiers had identity markers similar to human dog tags, but these were designed to be removed and replaced based on assignment and rank. Human tags were permanent personal identifiers that could not be changed or taken away. This difference in philosophy made the aliens uncomfortable. The most effective resistance tactic was what became known as the tag drop. Human fighters would leave their dog tags at sites of successful attacks against alien positions. The aliens would find these metal discs and realize that specific named individuals were responsible for their losses. Unlike fighting an anonymous enemy, the aliens were being defeated by people with names, families, and personal histories. This made the conflict feel personal and immediate, rather than just another routine conquest. The psychological impact was devastating to Council morale. As the resistance grew stronger, it began receiving support from unexpected sources. Some alien soldiers from conquered species began defecting and providing intelligence about Council weaknesses. These defectors were inspired by human determination and wanted to join the fight for freedom. The war was spreading beyond Earth as news of human resistance reached other Council-controlled worlds. Several species began their own rebellions using tactics learned from human broadcasts. The simple concept of refusing to surrender individual identity was proving contagious across the galaxy. By the end of the first month of occupation, the Galactic Council faced a crisis that threatened their entire empire. What had begun as a routine planetary integration had become a galaxy-wide revolution. The name that struck fear into Council hearts was not that of any human leader, but of a simple Korean soldier whose metal tag had become a symbol of defiance. The aliens had thought they were conquering another primitive species. Instead, they had awakened something that would bring down their empire. The human resistance was teaching the galaxy that freedom was worth any sacrifice, and that individual identity was more powerful than any weapon. 3 months after the first alien ship landed in Seoul, the war had spread far beyond Earth. The Galactic Council found themselves fighting simultaneous rebellions on 17 different worlds as species that had been peacefully integrated for centuries suddenly began demanding their freedom. The human concept of individual identity was proving more contagious than any disease. Colonel Kim Tae-ho now commanded a joint resistance force that included not only human fighters, but also defectors from various alien species who had joined the rebellion. These beings brought advanced technology and inside knowledge of Council military tactics, but they also brought something more valuable: hope that the Empire could actually be defeated. The turning point came when the aliens made their most desperate mistake. They had captured hundreds of human resistance fighters, including Captain Lee Min-jun and Dr. Kim Hae-won, during a series of coordinated raids across Seoul. The Council commander announced that these prisoners would be transported to other worlds as examples of what happened to species that resisted integration. What the aliens failed to understand was that they had just given the human resistance exactly what it needed: a clear target that would unite every fighting cell on Earth. The prison ship was massive and heavily defended, but it had one critical weakness it needed to land at Incheon Airport to take on the captured humans. General Park Dong-ho, formerly a colonel, had been coordinating resistance activities from hidden bunkers throughout the Seoul metropolitan area. He immediately began planning the largest human military operation since the invasion began. Every available fighter would converge on Incheon for one desperate attempt to free their captured comrades. Lieutenant Park Yuna had become an expert in alien computer systems through months of dangerous infiltration missions. She carried her dead brother dog tag along with tags from dozens of other fallen resistance members that had been entrusted to her by their families. The weight of all that metal reminded her constantly of what they were fighting for. The battle plan was simple in concept, but terrifying in execution. Human resistance fighters would attack the prison ship during the loading operation, using every weapon and tactic they had developed over 3 months of guerrilla warfare. The odds of success were minimal, but the alternative was watching their friends disappear forever. Dr. Kim team had been working on their most ambitious project, yet a device that could completely overload alien shield generators instead of just temporarily disrupting them. The technology required precise timing and would only work once, but if successful, it could bring down the defenses of even the largest council ship's technician. Lee Jae-sung had spent weeks studying the layout of Incheon Airport and the alien security procedures. He identified 17 different approach routes and calculated the optimal timing for a coordinated assault. The aliens expected scattered guerrilla attacks, but they were about to face something resembling a conventional military operation. The night before the rescue attempt, resistance fighters from across Korea converged on hidden positions around the airport. Many had traveled for days through damaged countryside, avoiding alien patrols and surveillance systems. They came not because they were ordered to, but because they could not live with themselves if they did not try. Among the fighters gathering for the assault was Oh Min-kyung, a middle school teacher who had learned to build explosives from online tutorials. Her students had been evacuated from Seoul, but she stayed behind to fight. Her improvised weapons had destroyed 3 alien patrol vehicles, and she wore the dog tags of 2 resistance fighters who died in those attacks. The aliens had stationed their best troops around the prison ship, expecting some kind of rescue attempt, but their defensive preparations were based on fighting other advanced civilizations. They positioned their forces to repel attacks by similar technology, not desperate humans with improvised weapons and nothing left to lose. As dawn broke over Incheon, the resistance attack began with a coordinated strike on alien communication towers throughout the airport. Human fighters had learned that disrupting council coordination was more effective than trying to match their firepower. The aliens found themselves cut off from their command structure just as thousands of humans emerged from hiding. The battle lasted 18 hours and changed the nature of the war forever. Wave after wave of resistance fighters threw themselves against alien defensive positions using tactics that prioritized mission success over personal survival. They carried the dog tags of fallen comrades and fought with the fury of people who had lost everything except their determination. Dr. Kim device worked perfectly, bringing down the prison ship shields and allowing human weapons to damage its hull for the first time. The sight of alien armor actually being penetrated by human bullets sent a shock through council forces that rippled across their entire fleet. Some alien soldiers began retreating without orders. What broke the council morale completely was the sight of humans advancing through deadly energy weapon fire while carrying identification tags of their dead friends and relatives. The aliens had never encountered an enemy that fought harder when outnumbered, that became more dangerous when cornered. When the prison ship finally fell and the human prisoners were freed, they found something that amazed them: alien soldiers fleeing in panic. For the first time in their conquest of Earth, Council forces were running away from humans instead of the other way around. The psychological impact of this reversal spread quickly through alien ranks. The captured prison. Ship contained intelligence that revolutionized human understanding of their enemy. The Galactic Council was not the invincible empire it claimed to be. Their military had grown soft through centuries of easy victories against civilized opponents, who surrendered quickly to avoid bloodshed. More importantly, the ship computers revealed that Council control over their empire was fragile and based more on fear than actual strength. Many species were held in check only by the belief that resistance was hopeless. The sight of humans successfully fighting back was beginning to inspire rebellions throughout the galaxy. Lieutenant Park discovered that 17 worlds had already declared independence from Council rule using human-inspired tactics of individual identification and grassroots resistance. The simple dog tag concept had evolved on different worlds into various forms, but the message was the same. Every being had value and identity that could not be erased. The intelligence also revealed that the Council military was designed to fight large organized armies, not the kind of cellular resistance that humans had developed. Their tactics, sensors, and weapons were all optimized for conventional warfare between similar civilizations. Human. Resistance fighters realized they had stumbled onto something revolutionary in galactic military history. They were fighting like an apex predator species that treated every battle as a fight to the death, while their enemies fought like a police force trying to maintain order. The success at Incheon marked the beginning of the end for the Galactic Council Empire. News of the human victory spread to every conquered world within days, inspiring new rebellions and giving hope to species that had accepted slavery for generations. The dog tag revolution was becoming unstoppable. General Kim received communication from resistance movements on 12 different worlds, asking for human advisors to help organize their own liberation struggles. The species that had been considered too primitive for membership in galactic civilization was now being asked to teach advanced aliens how to fight for freedom. As reports flooded in from across the galaxy, it became clear that the Council had made an error that would destroy their 1,000-year empire. They had assumed that superior technology guaranteed victory, but humans had proven that determination and individual identity were more powerful than any weapon. The prison ship rescue had cost the Resistance nearly half their fighters, but it had accomplished something more valuable than saving a few hundred prisoners. It had shown the galaxy that the Galactic Council could be beaten by beings willing to sacrifice everything. For their freedom, Private Park Min-ho had been dead for 3 months, but his dog tag had become the symbol of the greatest revolution in galactic history. His simple metal disc proved that individual identity was. 6 months after the first alien ship landed in Seoul, the Galactic Council faced a crisis that threatened their entire civilization. What had begun as a simple planetary integration had become a galaxy-wide revolution. 17 species had declared independence, and more were joining the rebellion every day. The name that struck fear into Council hearts wasn't that of any human leader or general. It was a simple set of numbers and letters stamped on a metal tag. Park Min-ho, Private, Korean Defense Force. The young soldier's identification had become a symbol that transcended species and worlds. Rebel forces across the galaxy began wearing similar tags, each one representing their refusal to be unnamed slaves in someone else's empire. The Council's intelligence reports spoke of entire fleets defecting when human advisors showed them how to adapt their technology for guerrilla warfare. Colonel Jang, now promoted to general, found himself in command of a joint human-alien fleet preparing for the final assault on the Council's home system. Species that had never communicated before were working together, united by the simple human concept that freedom was worth any sacrifice. The dog tags had become more than identification. They were a declaration that every individual life had meaning and value. The Council's last desperate gambit was to threaten Earth directly. Their remaining forces gathered for a massive bombardment. That would turn the planet into a warning to other rebellious worlds. But as their ships approached the solar system, they found something that defied all their calculations. Humanity had prepared for this moment. Every human on Earth, from newborns to the elderly, wore dog tags. Not just military personnel, but teachers, farmers, engineers, artists. Everyone had embraced the symbol that meant they would rather die as individuals than live as anonymous slaves. The sight of an entire species ready to face extinction, rather, than surrender broke the last of the Council's resolve. The final battle never came. Instead, faced with the certainty that humans would fight to the last person and inspire countless other species to do the same, the Council leadership surrendered. Their empire collapsed not from military defeat, but from the realization that some enemies were too dangerous to conquer. A species that valued individual identity over collective survival was impossible to integrate into their system. In the aftermath, as new alliances formed among free worlds, humans discovered their unique role in the galaxy. They weren't the strongest or most advanced species, but they were the ones who had taught others that technology without spirit was hollow, that order without freedom was meaningless, and that a simple piece of metal stamped with a name and number could be more powerful than the mightiest weapon. Private Park Min-ho had died in the first week of the invasion, but his legacy lived on in every being who refused to accept tyranny. His dog tag, displayed in the new Galactic Museum of Freedom, bore a simple inscription that had become the motto of the free worlds. "I am Park Min-ho. I served with honor. I will not be forgotten." Those words, spoken by a young soldier facing execution, had brought down an empire and changed the course of galactic history forever.